Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. This is going to be my post-fight reaction to UFC Vegas 50. The main event was Thiago Santos versus Magomed Ankalaev, and Ankalaev defeated Santos by a fairly dominant decision. And I know a lot of people are going to crap on this fight and say how boring it was and that it was terrible. I think that's a little bit harsh. I think that it wasn't the most exciting fight, but I still think it was a fun, high tension light heavyweight fight. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second, but let's talk about what went down in the fight. Ankalaev pretty much dominated this entire fight. I would have gave it Ankalaev 50-45. I would have gave him all 5 rounds if it wasn't for Santos dropping him in the second round. At the very end of the second round, he dropped him. I don't think he was terribly rocked. Ankalaev's eyes were still staring up at Santos, and Santos kind of pounced on him, but really wasn't able to do much damage after dropping him. Outside of that, it was just Ankalaev kind of slowly picking him apart. He was doing a lot of great things. I mean, he was moving forward. As soon as Santos would start to explode, Magomed Ankalaev would get out of the way and counter him. And in the first round, Ankalaev landed, I think it was 2 check right hooks. As soon as Santos started to kind of lunge in with his blitzing, striking, and I think that really is what caused the fight to be lackluster and uneventful. The right hands kind of really got Santos's respect. Then all of a sudden, from then on out, basically, Santos was not really throwing any punches. It was mainly leg kicks and body kicks and head kicks. He was only really throwing kicks after the first round, very sparingly throwing the punches. I know he did end up catching him. I think it was with a right hand at the end of the second round and dropping him. But for the most part, Magomed Ankalaev just outclassed him in this fight. Wasn't super dominant, but, he won every single round outside of the second round. He could have 50-45'd him if he wouldn't have got caught with the one strike that put him down. And, I think Ankalaev looked impressive. I still think he's got ways to go as far as potentially earning him a title shot. And I know, this fight doesn't really garner him enough attention to maybe make a claim for a title shot, or at least make a legitimate claim for a title shot. He asked for a title shot in the post-fight interview in the cage, but there's no way he's getting a title shot off of this. We have Glover Teixeira versus Yuri Prochazka coming up. We have Alexander Rakic kind of waiting in the wings, as well as Jan Blachowicz, who just lost the belt. I don't think Magomed Ankalaev is going to jump over those guys. But in the fight, I think it was a quality win over a guy like Santos. But honestly, I said in my pre-fight prediction video, I thought Ankalaev would be very careful early on and eventually get the stoppage in the 4th round via TKO and went to decision. But Santos is a particularly dangerous opponent, and I know I don't think he's the same since he tore both of his knees up in the John Jones fight, but he still has a nasty amount of power, and he's still pretty explosive. And he had a couple moments where he blitzed forward in this fight and just came really close to taking Ankalaev's head off. And I think that's why a lot of people are going to blame Santos, because his last few fights have been, have left a lot to be desired. You have the Johnny Walker fight that wasn't particularly exciting. You had the Alexander Rakic fight that wasn't particularly exciting. And now you have the Magomed Ankalaev fight, which wasn't particularly exciting. But I think it's because a lot of guys are really cautious when fighting Santos, just because he likes to blitz forward with those heavy strikes and look to knock you out. And I think a lot of people are super careful. I think Ankalaev came in, worrying about the power of Santos. And after he got dropped in that second round, he was a lot more careful. It kind of annoyed me a bit, and again, I'm not in there, but Ankalaev was cutting off Santos perfectly. He wasn't just following him, he was sidestepping him and cutting him off. And then he would throw like 1 or 2 punches. He really wasn't throwing combinations, particularly after that second round. It seemed like he was just throwing 1, 2 punches every single time. Santos' only bright spot was his leg kicks. I talked about this in my pre-fight. Magomed Ankalaev is very heavy on that lead leg, and Santos has great leg kicks. But I felt like he didn't spam him enough. We'll talk about it in the feature fight on the card, but Sadiq Yusuff had some success with the leg kicks, and he just continued to chop him over and over and over again. Santos threw him sparingly. I mean, he threw quite a bit over the course of 25 minutes, but I felt like he could have exploited it more and really limited the mobility of Ankalaev a bit better, and maybe potentially change the outcome of this fight, because if the mobility starts to be limited, maybe he can catch him on the feet. But Ankalaev goes out there, wins a dominant performance. I thought that he would grapple more in this fight. I don't believe he even initiated any grappling until the 4th round. He got a pretty good takedown. I think he got the body lock and tripped him, took him down, but it was towards the tail end of the round. And then the 5th round, I can defend the first 4 rounds. I thought it was high tension just because the fact that this was a big fight, both guys with brutal knockout power, and I understand that both guys are being careful. And, I thought the first 4 rounds were still pretty fun. The 5th round was just so boring and awful. It was basically Ankalaev just clinching up with Thiago Santos and kneeing his thighs over and over and over again. 5th round, I think, really what left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. But I still don't think it was an absolutely terrible fight. There's been far worse fights. I think what happened is, and we're going to talk about the rest of the main card here in a minute, this card was so good and so exciting that we kind of got to that main event. And because it wasn't as exciting as the rest of the card, a lot of people end up leaving thinking, oh, this main event was terrible. I don't know where Thiago Santos goes from here. He's only won 1 out of his last 5 fights now, and that 1 win is coming against Johnny Walker, which doesn't age very well. As far as Magomed Ankalaev, I feel like there's a lot of options. I wouldn't mind seeing him against Anthony Smith. I wouldn't mind seeing him against Jamal Hill. I wouldn't mind seeing him against potentially Alexander Rakic or Jan Blachowicz. All those are great options. I think Magomed Ankalaev, Alexander Rakic, and Yuri Prochazka are all the future of the light heavyweight division. I don't think, this is a massive statement win by any means, but I think a win over Thiago Santos still means a good bit. And I mean, he's just slowly working his way up the rankings. I think Thiago Santos was ranked number 5 in this fight. He goes out there, he puts on a fairly dominant performance. I think some people will respect him more for this win. Thiago Santos is not an easy fighter to defeat, and he went out there and made it look relatively easy. He was beating up the body. He was landing with the hands. I would have liked to seen him be more aggressive, but that's something we can see kind of down the line a little bit more. He can adjust. I just wish that he was more aggressive in this fight, because I really think had he put his foot on the gas a little bit, and it's easier said than done when you have an absolute savage like Thiago Santos throwing back. But I think if Ankalaev would have put his foot on the gas a little bit more, maybe he could have potentially got Thiago Santos out of there. Thiago Santos was looking kind of tired in that 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. At one point, he was kind of weirdly walking off with his hands down, staring down at the ground. It was a weird moment, and you could just tell he was starting to get tired. And I guess that's when Magomed Ankalaev decide to start to grapple there, just because he noticed, Santos was starting to get fatigued. But overall, I don't think it was the worst main event in the world. I think it was okay. I'm definitely not dying or itching to go back and rewatch that fight. But when you have 2 guys with as much power as Ankalaev and Santos, it's hard to be super aggressive. And Santos, I believe it was the 4th round, he came out, after not really throwing any hands from basically 2nd, 3rd. I think it was early in the 4th round. He had a couple blitzes where he blitzed on Ankalaev. Ankalaev got out of the way and then kind of went back to the same old from Santos. So overall, I still can't wait to see Ankalaev's next fight. I know this wasn't the most exciting performance, but let's talk about the co-main event, which is super depressing. Marlon Moraes gets brutally KO'd by Song Yadong in the 1st round. And, now arguably Moraes could be on a 6-fight losing streak. 4 of them by TKO or KO. He's currently on a 4-fight losing streak because he technically has a decision win over Jose Aldo. But the chin is just gone. And I know Song Yadong has super fast, powerful punches, but it's just like Marlon cannot take a shot to save his life. He had some moments in this fight while it lasted. He landed a couple good combinations, but Song Yadong just came out with early pressure and just looked to take him out from the get-go. He landed a right hand early, stung Marlon Moraes, but he kind of recomposed himself, and he wasn't rocked badly, but Song Yadong kept pressuring him, and Marlon landed a couple shots to get the respect of Song Yadong, but not enough, because Song Yadong continued to march forward, eventually landed a right hand to the temple, back of the head kind of type area, and then a left hook, which was partially blocked by Marlon, and then a nasty uppercut that just slept Marlon, went down, walk-off KO by Song Yadong. Incredible performance by Song Yadong. I think Marlon Moraes is still a great fighter. I actually picked him in this fight. I thought he would come in and try to fight with a very high guard and shell up, try to kind of protect that chin a bit. But it's unfortunate. Now he's on a 4-fight losing streak. I still think Marlon's a great fighter. I just think the chin has had it. And I think, he has a little bit of stamina issues. But mainly it's just like, how can you continue to try to win fights against elite level guys if you can't absorb any shots? And at this point, I don't think Marlon's chin can absorb any shots. I still think he's a great fighter. I think he has a great skill set, but the chin's just not there. And Song looked phenomenal tonight. I don't want to take anything away from him, but now it's like looking at this win and you see a guy that's been chinned so many times, even from me who picked Marlon and think Marlon's a great fighter. It's just like he walks around with a massive off button right on his chin. Song looked super fast tonight. The striking looked really solid. He was ripping to the body of Marlon Moraes as well, which I thought was phenomenal. Can't wait to see where Song Yadong goes from here. The 135-pound division is absolutely stacked. The best division in the UFC. I have no idea who the UFC is going to match Song up with next. He called out Dominic Cruz. There's plenty of fights. I would like to see him basically fight anyone in the bantamweight division. And can you imagine if the UFC still had John Lineker, who just became the one championship champion within the bantamweight division today? Could you imagine if they booked Song Yadong versus John Lineker? I know that's a fantasy matchup at this point because they're in two different organizations, but that would be a phenomenal matchup. Moving down the card a little bit, Sadiq Yusuff gets a decision win over Alex Caceres. This was a competitive fight, but this basically consisted of the first round was really close. I thought the second and third round clearly went to Sadiq Yusuff. And basically this fight was just Sadiq Yusuff chewing up the inside leg of Alex Caceres. He pressured him nonstop. He landed some good combinations. Caceres made this fight very competitive for a guy who's 19-13 in his professional record. But Sadiq Yusuff went out there and did what he was supposed to do. I thought he would get the win here. He just brutally chopped the inside leg of Alex Caceres. I don't know what the stats were, but it was probably 30 to 40 inside leg kicks or just leg kicks overall. He was just brutalizing the legs of Alex Caceres. And Alex Caceres' main game plan is just use his mobility, his funky movement, and just try to outstrike you, mix in the grappling occasionally. But as he started to chop that leg, he really started to slow down. First round could have went either way. But as the rounds went on, the damage of the leg really started to add up. And eventually, as it goes into the third round, Sadiq Yusuff just continued to chop the leg and he wins a decision. I think they scored it 230-27s and 129-28. The Khalil Rountree fight versus Karl Roberson moving down the card. Khalil Rountree gets the second round KO. First round was highly competitive. Karl Roberson was trying to just, use his footwork and circle out and use leg kicks against Khalil Rountree. Eventually, Khalil Rountree, first round was very competitive. You could have gave it to either guy. Second round, Khalil Rountree caught Roberson with a nasty punch, dropped him, and from there on out, it looked like Rountree was trying to kill him. At one point, he threw the nastiest body kick to a downed opponent, which is really risky because if you accidentally hit him in the head, you're getting DQ'd. Threw a nasty body kick and then just began to swing heavy punches. I think Roberson found his way back to his feet after that body kick, but he just could not withstand the attack of Rountree. TKOs and referee steps in. I think it was Herb Dean. Gotta praise Herb Dean for a good performance there. I was scared. I was scared for Karl Roberson there. I thought Herb Dean was going to wait longer. But Khalil Rountree, another impressive win. He's coming off that other win against Modestas Bukauskas where he landed that nasty oblique kick that just blew out his knee. Moving down the card to my favorite fight on the card, Drew Dober versus Terrance McKinney. What a wild fight. Terrance McKinney took this fight on 2 weeks' notice, and it was the biggest step up in competition that he ever had, and he came in to win. The initial step-in knee that I thought hurt Drew Dober, he kind of stumbled back a little bit. I don't believe landed at all, but it kind of stumbled Drew Dober back. He started kind of reaching for the leg, and McKinney, in this transitional space, started landing nasty haymakers. It was a left and then a right hand that rocked Drew Dober. It wasn't the first step-in knee. And then Drew Dober kind of was a little bit rocked. And then Terrance McKinney actually lands the same step-in knee, but this time it lands on the chin. I really thought that it was going to be really close to being stopped, but Drew Dober kept moving, eventually got back to his feet. Terrance McKinney just got crazy sloppy, throwing wild punches. He landed some. He landed a spinning back fist. Eventually ended up on top of Drew Dober. Didn't do much damage once he ended up on top of him, a couple elbows, I believe. And then as the fight went on, Drew Dober eventually, I guess, recovered, got his feet on the hips, pushed Terrance McKinney off of him. They got back to their feet, and Terrance McKinney started to get reckless again. You could see him, the energy of Terrance McKinney was starting to fade a little bit. He got clipped by Drew Dober, and then he clinched. He was kind of looking to recover a little bit, and Drew Dober landed a knee of his own, dropped Terrance McKinney, and just swarmed him with ground and pound until the referee stopped it. Amazing comeback by Drew Dober. But I just think this shows the level of experience of both guys. Terrance McKinney doesn't have a lot of experience. Drew Dober's been around forever. I don't think this is a lose for either guy. Terrance McKinney came in on 2 weeks' notice, put in a very good performance, and next time he just knows he has to be a little bit more patient. He can't get too sloppy and blow out his gas tank in the first round looking for the finish. We've seen that happen time and time again where guys look for a finish and end up getting tired out and then losing the fight. Look at Marlon Moraes versus Merab Dvalishvili. That happened in that fight. So Terrance McKinney's definitely going to learn from this fight. I don't think he took an absorbent amount of damage. He definitely dished out a lot of damage to Drew Dober, but it just shows what a veteran Drew Dober is. To absorb that damage, move enough where the referee isn't going to stop it, and eventually come back to win the fight. I think that was a phenomenal fight, one of the best one-round fights I've ever seen, and one of the best fights of this year, and especially considering, I mean, I know a lot of people say, because Terrance McKinney stepped in on short notice, I just said it myself, but Drew Dober also took a short notice fight here. Even though he was supposed to fight on this card, he's taking a totally different guy on in Terrance McKinney. Got to respect both of them. Maybe we'll see a rematch of this fight down the line. I think Terrance McKinney's stock goes up here because this was the biggest test of his career. And he came out, and he was so close to getting a finish. Moving down the card, Alex Pereira versus Bruno Silva. Alex Pereira wins by decision. This was a great fight. This was a competitive fight. Bruno Silva landed some good shots of his own. Everyone thought that Alex Pereira was going to be the far superior striker, and I believe that he was. But Bruno Silva was not just spamming takedowns. He was striking with Alex Pereira. I thought the first round could have went either way, and I thought the second and third round went to Alex Pereira. He just landed the cleaner shots. Bruno Silva was able to get him down, I think, twice, but not really control him there for any meaningful amount of time. Alex Pereira just showed that he can find his way back to his feet against a grappler, the skill set of Bruno Silva. I don't know if Alex Pereira is going to be fast-tracked up the rankings now. A win over Bruno Silva is a decent win. It's not the best win ever, but we know Alex Pereira has that history with Israel Adesanya, the current middleweight champion. Alex Pereira has defeated him twice, once by decision and once by KO. So a lot of people, myself included, kind of want to see, the middleweight division is kind of full of a lot of parity right now. Adesanya has 2 wins over Whitaker, 2 wins over Vettori, a win over Costa. We want to see some fresh blood in that middleweight division. And maybe Alex Pereira could be one fight away from a title shot. I know that sounds ludicrous, but he wants a big step up in competition. You could maybe do Alex Pereira versus Paulo Costa. And if Alex Pereira defeats Paulo Costa, who's I think ranked number 5, number 6 right now, there's no denying him. You could give him a title shot. I don't know. I have not seen both of those fights. I've only seen highlights of both of those fights with Israel Adesanya. I think his gas tank looked a little suspicious tonight. Started to get a little bit tired. He was defending takedowns. He did a good job defending the takedowns, but it kind of sapped his gas tank a little bit. I don't know if he'll be able to get by a guy like Vettori or a guy like Robert Whitaker. I'd like to see it, but at the same time, when you have a plethora of guys who are elite level guys who aren't necessarily going to look to grapple him, I think the UFC is going to be eyeballing that Pereira versus Adesanya trilogy. Technically, it would only be their first fight in MMA, but they fought in kickboxing before, and try to selectively matchmake Alex Pereira against another elite guy in the middleweight division, but a guy that's not going to try to grapple him. Because Alex Pereira, another thing I meant to mention, he looked massive. He looked a weight class above Bruno Silva. And I did not think this fight was going to go to decision. I thought Alex Pereira was going to get the KO in this fight, but Bruno Silva made it very competitive. And it's not like he was just spamming takedowns nonstop. He went for a couple takedowns. He got stuffed on some. He got 2 of them and really did nothing with it. So Alex Pereira got valuable MMA experience tonight, considering he doesn't have that many MMA fights. But overall, decent performance. I think he's got a lot of work to do to compete with the elite of the elite at middleweight. But I think you match him against a striker, he can compete with any striker within the division. And I'm really interested to see if he can make his way to Israel Adesanya and challenge for that middleweight title. But overall, tonight was a great night of fights. There were some good prelims as well. I know the main event left a lot to be desired, but I still think it was a quality fight. I just think because of the quality of the excitement of the previous fights, I think it made the main event look a little bit worse. But I still think it was a fun night. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for watching.